Welcome Honors Algebra 2 first hour to your first experience with a flipped classroom, especially in a math classroom. I wanted to take a few minutes to go over the expectations and guidelines, any kind of questions you might have, and try and answer them before we hit the ground running on Monday. You just took the Chapter 6 test, and what I want to do now is before we start Chapter 7 on Monday, I want to make sure all of us are on the same page and make sure there's any kind of questions that you might have that you think through them clearly over the weekend, and so we can answer them all on Monday. I have a couple things I want to go through to make sure that I get my questions out of the way, and then hopefully this will answer some of yours along the way as well. So if you look at the screen, I have this Word document up here. There's a couple things I want to point out just about what the idea of a flipped classroom might be in my eyes. And as we progress through this might change, but for at least right now, this is what I'm thinking might be the case. There's a couple quick facts. First, you will be expected to watch a video every night on the math content we will be covering the next day in class. And so you're always a little bit ahead of the game. What that means is, for example, if we were learning about 7.5 tomorrow, I would want you to go home tonight and watch the 7.5 material so that you can go be able to be successful the next day in class looking at and working with the 7.5 content. So you're always a little bit ahead of the game, but that's what the content or that's what the structure is for a flipped classroom. The second bullet says all the videos, this one included, are posted on my YouTube channel. Here's the actual web address if you need it. Obviously, all of you probably have it if you're watching this video. Because you're watching this one, you must have gotten it off my website. But nonetheless, that's where they're all going to be posted. Number 3, when you come to class, you will have a homework assignment, a partner activity, a group activity that you will complete in class. Notice that it's not always going to be homework. Okay, I think homework will be some of the time. So when you come into class, I'll give you an assignment. I'll have you work in groups or pairs or by yourself or whatever it may be that day. But it's not always going to be homework. So you're going to be watching the video the night before. You're going to come in. You might have a group activity or partner activity. There might be a lot of different things that we can do in class. But it's not going to be me standing in front of the room showing you how to do certain examples or whatever it is like we have been typically been doing in the past. And so know that the structure of the classroom completely changes from me being in the middle of the room, kind of being the center of attention. Now all of a sudden, now you guys are the center of attention, and you are doing your own thing to be successful with the content that we're working with. Number 4 says, if you have iPads, iPhones, smartphones, tablets, or whatever it is, any kind of electronic device that has access to the internet, I want you to please bring them. There's 2 reasons for this. The first one is in this bullet itself. It says, if you are stuck when you're working on homework, I want you to be able to go back to the video that you watched the night before or 2 nights before or whatever it is, and I want you to be able to go back and rewatch the structure or rewatch the example or whatever it is that you need. I want you to be able to go back and rewatch that video. If you don't have it, now you're waiting for me or waiting for somebody else to explain it to you versus being able to be independent and work on it yourself. Yeah, I may be working with a different student. You don't want to waste the next 5 minutes, and so now you have the access to go back and rewatch some of that material that you might have forgotten overnight. The next reason to have your iPhone or iPad or whatever it is I want you to bring your book every day. And so if you don't have a smartphone, don't have an electronic device, fine, that's no big deal. You can go ahead and bring in the hard copy of the book every day. If you have a smartphone or an electronic device and you'd rather access the online book instead using that, go ahead, be my guest. That way you can only carry on your phone, which all of you do anyway. That way you can go ahead and access your online book that way instead. The one thing that I know we talked about last week was for Mac users, for like iPhones, iPads. Adobe Reader isn't the greatest. It doesn't work on iPhones and iPads currently. And so I've been asking around a little bit. I know some students have passed along some information about 2 good apps. One called Puffin Browser, and both are right here, and the other one is iSwifter. Both of them, apparently, according to these students, are 2 good apps that help you read Adobe Reader or PDF files. I wouldn't know personally. I'm an Android guy. I haven't used much Mac stuff, and so I don't know. And so these apps are not endorsed by me. I simply want to pass on some information that I heard from other students that said that these work. And so hopefully you can do the same and make sure that you can get around that little bit of a problem that you might have with Mac operating base. Also, you will be quizzed and tested like you usually would. So that's not going to change. I already anticipate that we're going to have a quiz later this week, probably Friday on 7-1 and 7-2. And so when you come in, you're going to take a quiz and a test like you normally would, independent, and just a normal, just like any other quiz and test we've taken so far this year. And so know that that's not going to change, and that's some of the results that I want to see in comparison to my third hour, which is exactly the same as usual. When they're kind of still in the normal classroom, I want to see if your results change based on what we're doing with the flipped classroom. The last bullet on this page says your class will be flipped for only chapter 7. My intent right now is to only flip for just one chapter and get results and see what happens. Now, at the very end, I may have you fill out some surveys on what you liked and disliked and whether you would like to do it again or not. But I want to look at the results first and see if that actually is something we want to do. If the results are showing off the charts gains in knowledge and you really know what's going on in comparison to my normal classroom, I don't see a reason why we won't continue it. Obviously, there's some time constraints there in terms of how to get all this organized. I understand that. But if I see something that's very, very good and you like it too, why wouldn't we keep doing it? But that's a bridge we're going to cross later because for now, I simply want to do it for Chapter 7 and see how it goes. What's a point structure like? Every day. Every day you're going to have 4 points that you can earn. So think of it as I'm going to grade your homework every single day, and you already know that homework's out of 4 points typically in a normal classroom. So it's going to act like we're going to grade homework every single day. But this is how the breakdown of the 4 points exists. First thing first, there's only going to be 1 point for completely filling out guided notes. So that's the first bullet here. There's 1 point for completely filling out guided notes. What you're going to be provided is I'm going to provide you with notes that go with the video that you're going to watch that night. And so there's certain situations and certain points in the video I'm going to ask you to fill in different things as you see them throughout the video. It helps you keep engaged, it helps you ask questions, it helps you interact with the video instead of just being passive and just watching the video and hoping that you learn everything without writing anything down. And so it's going to be 1 point for me to be able to look at those and see that you actually filled it out like I asked you to. The second point is providing an interesting question about last night's video at the beginning of class. When you walk in, I'm going to give you a little half sheet, quarter sheet, some little sheet of paper, and I'm going to ask you to write down a question from last night's video. It could be interesting. Okay, hopefully it's an interesting question. That's something that you've thought about that we can talk about as we progress through the day. But you can also ask a question about content in terms of saying, I don't get this, or I don't understand this part of it, or what does that mean? That's also a good question. So it doesn't necessarily need to be an interesting, outside the box kind of a question. Instead, it can be a content question too, and asking a question of, I don't get this. Can you answer that question? Hopefully that starts some dialogue between you and I, and that way we can get that discussion going and answer that question where you may not have been able to in a regular classroom, in a kind of a big classroom environment when there's 35 other kids in the classroom asking a similar question. The third point is actually participating. Whether we do a homework assignment, a group activity, a partner activity, when I observe, it's going to be very easy for me to see who's on task and who's off task. If you're using your phone and not using your phone to watch it, or do the online book, and you're watching other YouTube videos or not participating in the activity that we're doing, okay, you're just simply going to lose that point. And so if you think about it, if it's only 4 points, you lose 1 point, that's 3 out of 4. That means you're getting a 75% for the day. That's a middle C. So it's pretty drastic if you lose one of these points. Okay, I want you to make sure you can stay on task and do what I ask you to do. So please make sure you stay engaged in what we're doing, and this point won't be a problem at all. The last point is actually completing the stuff I ask you to complete. And so I'm going to give you some sort of amount of homework in class or activity. I want you to finish it. Yeah, there's certainly a time constraint, so sometimes we may not be able to finish, but I can gauge that. I can see if you're engaged and working up to the bell. Okay, I'm not going to take the point away. But if you're kind of not doing what you're supposed to be doing and dragging your feet a little bit and don't get what I expect to get done, okay, you will lose this point. So 4 points, each broken down in the way that you see right now, and so please make sure that you do that every single day. Finally, for Monday, please bring your book or bring your electronic device, whatever that might be, as long as it has access to the internet and can get to the online book. And also, please bring your signed consent form if you haven't already. I gave you a hard copy last week of the consent form. I want to make sure that you've signed it, your parent or guardian has signed it, to make sure that we can move forward. The only misconception is the consent form isn't to opt you out of the flipped classroom. All of us are doing a flipped classroom. The only consent that you need to give me is whether or not I can use your results in my paper or in my thesis at the very end. And so we can talk more about that on Monday, but if you could please make sure you get that thing signed and get it back to me as soon as possible. Therefore, there's no snags along the way. Hopefully, I have a full set of data for a full class. That way, we can get some meaningful results and see if this whole flipped classroom thing actually works. Hey, have a great weekend, and I will see you on Monday.